Welcome, everybody, to Postgame Takeaways with Inside ND Sports. I'm Tyler James. He's the one and only Eric Hansen, and we're here to share our postgame takeaways from Notre Dame's 27-24 victory over Penn State. Eric, what was your biggest takeaway from Notre Dame's Orange Bowl win to earn a spot in the national championship game?
My biggest takeaway was I think Notre Dame fans were never satisfied with this moment just happening. They wanted magic to be around it, and it just felt like there was so much of that going on today where it almost felt like destiny. And then you kind of lean into that and you say, you know what? Maybe it was bigger than that. I mean, maybe it was about belief and faith and Marcus Freeman not giving up on people. I mean, you think about all the guys that were backups, all the guys that were injured players that never gave up, that had key points in this game. Even a guy like Jaden Greathouse, who I just changed his name to Jordan. Jaden Greathouse, who wasn't an injured player but hadn't been used that much, has a career high in this game. Mitchell Evans, I mean, you can go on and on. Even just the little bit that Steve Angeli played going into halftime, Charles Jagaza, after not playing a whole season, just playing big snap after big snap, says something about not only Marcus Freeman's vision, but his ability to put it in action.
Yeah, I wanted to hit on Greathouse. I think if I have this correct, that Leonard won the offensive most valuable player for the game. I thought it should have been Jaden Greathouse. I thought he was excellent, not just the 54-yard touchdown, but he had a 17-yard third down conversion. He had consecutive catches after a 2nd and 14 on that drive where he scored the game-tying touchdown on that 55-yard reception. And then with the 10-yard catch on 3rd and 3 to set up the game-winning field goal. So it wasn't just the big play. He was continuing to be clutch for Notre Dame after a bit of a surprisingly unproductive season for him. We had high expectations for him coming into the season, and he looked like the guy that we thought he could be tonight, and Notre Dame absolutely needed it, and he certainly rose to the occasion. But also all those other guys you mentioned too. Like, yeah, Charles Jagaza gets hurt in preseason camp, thinks his season's done, and he comes in for his first live snaps of the season at the end of the first half and plays some
at a position he didn't play.
Yeah, at a new position. Yeah, that wasn't even the position he was playing when he was practicing in August. So just unbelievable the way that this team continues to step up. You sort of felt like Notre Dame was dead at a couple points in this game, and then sure enough, they had a response and managed to come out with a victory.
Well, I mean, Tosh Baker, I mean, the guy gets beat out after Jagaza goes down. Okay, Tosh is going to be the left tackle. He gets beat out by a freshman, and when they really needed him, he was there. Steve Angeli gets beaten out by Riley Leonard. I mean, and you can go on and on. Gabe Rubio stepping up for Riley Mills, injured players. Jalen Sneed, who had been kind of inconsistent, has the big blitz and then Christian Gray, I mean, Marcus Freeman didn't have a lot of alternatives when Christian was getting picked on against USC, but he helped rebuild his confidence. And Notre Dame's playing for a national championship on January 20th against either Ohio State or Texas. And this whole season has felt like once they got past the hiccup against Northern Illinois, it just feels like very historic. I mean, I came into the market in 1988, and a few months later, they win a national championship. I'm like, well, this will happen all the time. And, 40-some years later, it did, or 30-some years later, I guess. I'm I'm making myself older.
Well, yeah, my first season on the beat was 2012, which was the last trip to a national championship game
in this stadium.
Yeah, in this stadium. Although I wasn't at that game, but it's kind of wild that Notre Dame is here, and the way, like, a critical moment of the game was the middle 8, which Notre Dame has excelled at all season. The last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half, and if you felt like Notre Dame had no business trailing by only 7 points at halftime, thanks to Steve Angeli leading that drive down the field when Riley Leonard goes out to get his head checked for a concussion, They get a field goal at the end of that drive. It wasn't the most beautiful thing, but they got it down the field to get that field goal, and that certainly helped, and that allowed them to just, hey, you go out and score a touchdown in the first drive of the second half, and the game's tied, and that's exactly what Notre Dame did. And it's just hard to believe at that moment. It's like, wow, this is a game again. Like this, you sort of felt like with all the injuries that were piling up, like, man, how is Notre Dame going to do this? And a few minutes into the second half, they're like, okay, I guess they're going to do this. I mean, it certainly wasn't over at that point, but you were back on the edge of your seat, and pretty incredible that this team keeps delivering in sort of the same ways that it's delivered throughout the season.
Another thing I want to mention is Al Golden, former Penn State tight end. Now, the current Penn State tight end did have a good game, but it wasn't game-breaking. He had 6 catches for 75 yards. He did have a couple of nice rushes. He's a handful.
Yeah.
But Al Golden came up. I mean, Al Golden adjusted at halftime. We're so used to seeing him make adjustments in games at halftime. And Notre Dame's defense really kind of got their legs back under them, where they looked like they didn't have any answers at the end of the first half. I mean, it looked like maybe this was going to be a double-digit loss. And Notre Dame comes back with a tremendous game plan in the second half. And I'm telling you, I think Notre Dame, if those aren't the best 2 coordinators in college, they're certainly in the conversation.
Yeah, and it didn't feel as momentous, although it was like, oh man, that might haunt Penn State later on. But when Penn State was unable to score when it got to the 4-yard line, or unable to score a touchdown when it got to the 4-yard line, had to settle for a field goal. The defense really stepped up there. Nicholas Singleton dropped what would have been a touchdown if he just holds on to it. It was a little bit behind him from Drew Aller, but
yeah, it was.
Singleton certainly rebounded from that. He still scored 3 touchdowns, but that was a big moment in the game that allowed Notre Dame to only be down a touchdown by getting a field goal at the end of the first half. And Notre Dame's been good in the red zone, had a little bit of luck on their side there, but that ended up being a really critical moment of the game when maybe Notre Dame could have let its guard down in that situation.
I think another thing that was really interesting, Tyler, was from a defensive standpoint was, other than Army and Navy, when have you seen a game where Notre Dame's played where the other team didn't have a wide receiver reception? Not a single wide receiver reception.
Yeah.
That was insane.
Yeah, it's wild. I asked James Franklin about that in the post game. Like, how do you not have a catch by your receivers? But obviously Tyler Warren is who they're trying to get the ball to most, and they did a good job of that. He caught,
and Singleton too.
Yeah, and Singleton only had 2 catches on 6 targets according to the post game box score. Depending on how accurate that is, Warren caught 6 of his 7 targets. So I wanted to give a shout out to guys on both teams for playing through injury. Jeremiah Love, just an absolute warrior. Like, I did not think he would be able to put in the performance he did. Now, certainly, I don't think he's the same as the Jeremiah Love that we know, but that touchdown run was just like, I couldn't believe he didn't go down the first time, and then he just kept going and he ended up scoring. I was like, holy crap. I swore aloud in the press box for everyone to hear. I couldn't believe that he in the state that he is in, that he was able to fight through that and get into the end zone. And I felt like there were times in the game where you kind of see it's like, oh, he's running hard. Like, it's not like he's being hesitant. He might not have the same speed and maybe the cut the same way as he normally does, but he was still running hard. And for him to come out and do that, and then Abdul Carter for Penn State, he's playing with one shoulder. You can see when he's tackling guys, he's basically using half his body, and he's just all over the place chasing down guys. And he's as advertised. And Notre Dame's lucky he wasn't fully healthy. But that just a complete beast for both of those guys to play like the way that they did in the conditions that their body's in. And I just a reminder, like, we're at game 15 and 16 for these 2 teams. And so this is a long season. And just like, I think we maybe take for granted all the time and effort and physical toll that this takes on the bodies of these college athletes, and wanted to give a tip of the cap to those guys.
Well, I want to give a tip of the cap to Dennis Sutton, who I was calling Danny in the pregame show. So my apologies to him, but he did have a heck of an interception. And I'll tell you what, I mean, Penn State is a heck of a team. and they deserve to be there. And, I thought Notre Dame was better than them when I did my final AP poll and so forth. And by a very small margin, they were.
Yeah.
So what's next for this team? Let's talk about what's, there's a little bit more time between this round and the next round. Notre Dame will have 11 days basically, and they had 7 this time. So Notre Dame goes back to school on Monday, so they'll start their second semester. So they'll be back in class. They'll have a few days without class, but they'll go back to class. The national championship game will be January 20th, which is a Monday night in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Stadium Notre Dame's already been to and played in and won in this year. And then they'll play either Ohio State or Texas. They play in the Cotton Bowl tomorrow. So what are your thoughts? What do you feel like besides recovery, what do you think Notre Dame needs to focus on here in the next few days besides great media answers?
Yeah, Marcus Freeman spoke to this tonight I think it was like maybe the very end of his press conference.
The birthday boy.
I may have been one of the first to wish him a happy birthday as it was just past midnight. Which he also shares a birthday with one of his daughters, so I thought that was kind of cool. I didn't realize that. He talked about, like, yes, the recovery part of it is great. Like, Notre Dame has an extra day compared to the other team, which it was in the opposite position coming out of the Sugar Bowl. But it's just like you can relax for just a moment, like, because you can't prepare for the next opponent yet because you don't know who it's going to be. So they're going to be able to maybe enjoy Friday, probably the first time they've enjoyed a day to sort of themselves since that Saturday after the win against IU, because they were in that situation as well, waiting to see. Well, I guess they already knew who they were playing that, but at least they had more time between those games, and there's a longer break here. But I think from my perspective, I think if you're Notre Dame, you'd rather play Texas than Ohio State, the way Ohio State is playing.
Right.
But obviously there's a blueprint out there to beat Ohio State too. So you can't put anything past this Notre Dame team. I think we've learned that with the way tonight went, and the Sugar Bowl against Georgia. So I think recovering, making sure you get those guys that are fighting through injuries to rest up, and just sort of take a breath. I'm not exerting myself physically anywhere near the amount that these guys are, and it felt like a very fast turnaround from New Orleans to Miami, and the fact that they have the day off to relax and watch the game and see who their opponent will be is a worthy reward for these guys after a well-deserved win.
Yeah, I'll tell you, what really struck me too going into the game was some of the stories. I did a story today where I tried to capture that. Hopefully I did. And I kind of focused on Al Golden, Riley Leonard, and Jordan Faison, and just kind of their stories and how words matter and where home is matters and humility matters and how that plays into how they got to this point. And just the formula, the culture. Tyler, when Brian Kelly left to go to LSU, he had things pointed in the right direction. I mean, there were a lot of double-digit season wins. There were a lot of good things that Brian Kelly did. And what I thought was going to happen, especially when Jack Swarbrick said, hey, we want to, keep the strength coach. We want to keep continuity with Tommy Rees being the offensive coordinator. I thought, well, this will be Brian Kelly 2.0. And Marcus Freeman really took it in a completely different direction. And I think he needs to get credit from me and other people for that. That's an awkward way to say it, but I think that he gets my admiration for that, for being willing to be a guy with not a lot of experience and saying, this is my vision and I'm going to put my stamp on it. And really, not too long after Brian Kelly had left, there wasn't a whole lot of other than a few players, there wasn't a whole lot of Brian Kelly left in the program. And I'm not saying, again, it's bad, but Marcus had a very distinct vision of how he wanted it to go. And you even think about stuff like this summer when we went over and had, in a small group of media, had lunch with, we had Jimmy John's. And
no free ads.
And, he talked about, I visited with these NFL teams, which is kind of expected. And then he mentioned being out on that nuclear aircraft carrier out in the Pacific for 48 hours with a communal toilet and a bunk mate. And that's how far he went to try to get answers on how to be a better head coach. And you just kind of reflect back on that. And all these things are kind of running through my mind as I think we're going to be in Atlanta and it's going to be a blast. And this is very exciting for the program. And I don't think this is an outlier. I don't think this is a flash in the pan. I think Notre Dame is going to be in this kind of conversation intermittently in years to come.
Yeah, and we got to give Mitch Jeter his flowers. I don't know if we said enough about him yet, for that he makes obviously the game-winning field goal, made both of his field goal attempts tonight. He's now 7 of 8 in the postseason for Notre Dame after obviously a bit of a roller coaster season for him with the groin injury and the way he's come through in the clutch for Notre Dame. And it seemed like there was no lack of confidence in him to be able to set up for that field goal to win the game.
Did you see the replay of the field goal, the second one?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It looked like it curved.
Yeah.
It looked like it was going toward the right upright, and then it went pew.
Yeah. I don't know how you do that. I'm not enough of a kicking expert to explain that, but there was a moment there. It was like, it looked like it might be starting to fade to the right, but it came back to the left, and there was no doubt that he made that, and it was almost all but over there, and certainly a wild victory from Notre Dame, and one that I think a lot of people will remember for quite some time, and certainly will be even more memorable if Notre Dame can finish this off with the national championship. Eric, do you want to tell the folks about why we did not have an Into the End Zone with Bob Morton tonight?
Yeah, I will speak to that. Bob shared this on his Facebook page, so I'll just read this from his Facebook post. It said, at halftime of tonight's game, I was called to my mom's bedside for what will prove to be her final drive on this side of eternity. She is sleeping. She is comfortable. She is tired and weary. She is bidding this world goodbye. For anyone who has known and loved Debbie, if there is anything you'd like me to say to her as I'm by her side tonight, feel free to message me. She doesn't always lock in on me, but when she does, I love having new things to tell her. And, I covered Bob when he was a player, and his dad died during his playing days, and he came out and spoke with the media and told the story about his dad, and he was very open about this today. And I love doing Into the End Zone with Bob, but I love even more that we become friends. And I appreciate all the great things that people have said on social media to pass along to Bob, and we're really happy that he's part of our team, and I'm a better person for having known him. He's an awesome guy.
Yeah, so our thoughts go out to Bob and his family. A difficult time for him. We appreciate all the time that he's been able to give to us, and apologize for not having that show. But I think obviously everyone can understand why that didn't happen. But we'll regroup, and we'll have plenty of post-game coverage coming from tonight's game. If you're not a subscriber to us over on InsideIndySports.com, we're celebrating the win by offering free trials that last until the spring. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, you can sign up using promo code NDBeatPSU, and there'll be a link in the video description below that you can click to sign up. That's for first-time subscribers. If you haven't tried us out yet, this is the time to do it. Ride with us through the national championship game and into spring with whatever news of the offseason comes, and just figure out if you want to stick around even longer than that. That'll be it from us in South Florida and South Bend. Please hit the subscribe button here. Give us a like before you close out this video. If you haven't done so already, we want to hear your biggest takeaways from this massive win. So let us know in the comments, and we will see you Monday night where football never sleeps.